I start off making ink blobs. There's no real rhyme or reason to this other than just making shapes on a page. I don't have a goal in mind, at least for most of these images. It's simply a matter of making shapes, and then later I'll come back and find those shapes. This last ink blob is an exception. Each time I do a set of ink drawings for the Voluspa Collector's Edition, I like to feature the seer that Odin summons to foretell the prophecy of Ragnarok. So for this last one, I have her in mind. Once the ink blobs have dried, I'll go in and start using pencil to find what's inside the drawing. This first fellow here, to me, looks like an old warrior who's wearing some sort of a Viking helmet that I'll come in and detail and find all those different little things that make it special. I often start by finding a nose and then starting to flesh out what I see from there. In this ink blob, I immediately saw a tongue sticking out down at the bottom, so I started thinking, what are characters from Norse mythology that feature a tongue? And that led me to remember the story of Logi, whose name means fire, who in one of the stories competes with Loki to see who can eat the fastest. As I'm sure will surprise no one who is familiar with my work, I often find old men when I look into these things, and these old men often end up being Odin. And that's where this drawing came in, particularly when one eye is prominent and the other is a big white space. Whenever I see a one-eyed old man, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. This is another one that starts with a nose and then branch out a beard, an eye. I think we might just have ourselves a dwarf or a gnome or one of the little creatures. And finish him up with a nice hat, perhaps a scarf, and yes, there he is. And for the last one, we have our seer, the Volva, who features so prominently in the story of the Voluspa. She actually is featured at the top of the book plate that I use to create these images. Once all the pencils are laid in, the next step is to begin inking. I like to use a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2 round brush. I just love the quality of the brush and its feel, and if you care for those brushes, they really do last a long time. I prefer to use Dr. P.H. Martin's matte black India ink. It's wonderful because it dries to a nice crisp flat tone that's great for scanning or really just looking at. I just love the finish that ink brings to a drawing. As I create these drawings, one of the things I'm very conscious of is trying to draw on the myths and the symbols that appear not just within all Norse mythology, but specifically within the Voluspa whenever possible. In this case, I give Odin this bright eye. His missing eye is shooting out with energy. That's where his magic power comes from. And if you look through the drawings throughout the Voluspa, that same symbol is one that I use quite a lot. I typically do anywhere from 10 to 20 of these all at once, and I'll admit there is some error. They don't all turn out great. That is one of the things when you're relying on the improvisation of doing these ink blobs and finding a drawing inside of them, that sometimes they don't work. I'm showing you the ones that I like, the ones that I'm excited about, and I also, because they're separate and I'm able to put them in the books, I only put the ones in the final collector's edition that I just think are great. I want someone to get home, see these drawings, be excited about the Voluspa, be excited about the book, and be really happy that they went ahead and got the collector's edition version. The last step, at least in terms of finishing these drawings, is using micron pens 01 and 05 to pick out the details. The one exception being the drawing of Odin, where I do go in with a white acrylic paint pen to add in some white in his eye, and then use a brush to move that around as well as add in some other detail. And of course, we can't forget one of the most important steps, which is signing each and every one of these wonderful little drawings. Once the drawings are complete, each Voluspa is carefully opened and the drawing is placed inside. Each book plate now has an original drawing, and each Voluspa is now its own unique item. At the end of the process, the prints, both of Thor and of the World Tree, exclusive to the collector's edition, are placed inside the box. The collector's edition of the Hávamál is limited to only an edition of 100, and so each one is both signed and numbered. And that's how I make each of the Voluspa collector's edition. I hope you enjoyed that. This video and other videos like it are made possible by the support I receive on Patreon. If you're interested in learning more about that, go to patreon.com/Sam Flegal. Please go to fatefulsigns.com where you can get your very own copy of the Voluspa in collector's edition or its open edition, and make sure to sign up for the mailing list where you can get updates about what's going on with Fateful Signs.